going to tie up an excellent articulated streamer. This is Russ Madden's Circus Peanut. It's a great fly. I fish it for smallmouth mostly around here. It started as a trout fly for even steelhead, for swinging to big browns, and steelhead up in Michigan has basically become a very, very popular fly all over the country. It is an articulated fly, and what that means is that there is a back section here that is independent, but it is attached to the front. So that means that when this is fishing in the water, this moves, separate from this. It just has a whole lot of action to it. It just really, really moves and just comes to life. This is an olive color. If you do any searching on the internet, you'll see tons of different colors. You'll also see different ways that people tie these. I'm following more or less what I know to be how Russ Madden ties these, not trying to necessarily be authentic to him, but just that's the way I've tied them, and they come out really well. You can also tie these. I've tied them with fish skulls on the front or a cone on the front instead of the eyes, or even blind without the eyes if you want to. Just depends on what you want the fly to do. So that is the Circus Peanut. I'll get started. Start the Circus Peanut by placing my hook in the vise. Now remember, this is an articulated pattern, so I'm working on the rear hook first. This is a 3366 in a size 2. Common hooks are Gamakatsu B10S, maybe a Tiemco 8089 as well you can use for these. Debarb the hook. I'm going to attach my thread. For thread, I'm using a UTC 140 Denier in olive. It's going to be an olive colored fly, so just keeping with that. I'm going to advance my thread down to the end of the shank, which is just kind of in between the point and the barb. You could use a different colored thread. Say you wanted to add a bright spot or something, you might even use like a fluorescent orange or something like that, just to add a couple bright spots in it. But the tail is made up of Marabou and Flashabou. I'm going to take my Marabou feather. I'm going to use 2 of them. I like to tie mine on the sides of the hook. A lot of times you try to put 2 of these together, or 3 or 4 at the same time. They don't compress on the hook well enough to really tie in that well. So I like to get these wrapped on a little bit, move them over to the outside, and then go ahead and crank down on that to secure them real well on the side. Trim away this excess. You could also wrap that down the hook shank if you want to bulk that up a little bit. And I'm going to take my second Marabou feather, taking away some of the excess fluff on the bottom that I know I don't need. The tail is usually about a hook length long. I'm now going to tie that over on my side. Again, it doesn't have to be just perfect, but tying them both in like this, at least you're assured that you're getting that Marabou tied in and secured very well. Great thing about Circus Peanut is it can be a ugly, messy looking fly, and it'll fish just as well. So for the Flashabou, I'm using this is a holographic Flashabou in a fire tiger color, and that's just because it kind of goes along with the overall olive color. I'm going to bring it up, and on my side, I'm going to bring those down so that the ends of those are just past the tail a little bit. I do want to have those longer than the tail. They will flutter and flash much better if they're not lost in the tail. Bringing my thread down a little bit, I can then bring the rest of that Flashabou and wrap it over to the other side and bind it in. And I'm going to trim that so that it is just a little bit longer than the tail, kind of even with the other Flashabou. That gets a little unwieldy. You can wet your fingers, moisten your fingers a little bit, kind of collect all that together. Wrap forward, binding in the rest of that Marabou. It's really not critical that it be nice and smooth because we're going to put some Estaz on it in just a second, and it's going to make it look pretty scruffy anyway. A little more level. So I'm using a opal olive Estaz. This is just a standard Estaz in a olive color. They call it opal olive. I'm going to tie in 4 of that Estaz right along the hook shank, bind that in well. I'm going to wrap forward. You could wrap to halfway if you want. I like to go just a little bit further forward than halfway, but it's up to you. You'll see why in just a second. Now, this is also a fly that is real good for adding in some extra head cement here and there just to secure that just a little bit. Take your Estaz, start wrapping it forward. It is not super critical that it's a nice, packed body. So if the wrap is a little bit open, that's fine. I do stroke back the fibers so that I'm not trapping any in along the hook shank. Now once I get to the thread here, I'm going to tie this off and I'm going to clip it off. A lot of people will leave that attached, and if you look at some other videos, you'll see where some people will leave that attached. I find it bulks things up a little bit, and I would rather clip that off like that. This is where we're going to add in our legs. The legs on these I'm using some Sili Legs. Sili is for silicone. You could use some rubber legs if you want. It's up to you how many you tie in. I like to use 3. And I'm going to tie in 3 on both sides. But if you tie in 3, actually I'll show you a trick here. Your Sili Legs, when you get them, they're still attached on the ends. If you leave those attached, especially with a fly like this, it can actually be beneficial for your tying because the individual legs won't be separate and won't get in your way. So if you just take these, feel it like that, it'll split off, and then you just leave those ends and we'll cut those at the end. So I'm going to take the Sili Legs about the midpoint on them. I'm going to bring them around to my side. And I'm going to secure those in, winding backwards a little bit. Then the same thing I did with the Flashabou, I can take these legs to the other side, wrap them in, and they're secured over on the other side. Just leave these just the way they are for now. We'll reattach our Estaz. Again, don't forget your glue. Now I'm only going to get 2 or 3 wraps of this Estaz in here. I'm just kind of continuing that body up. And then we're going to be wrapping in our Schlappen. One more right there. You want to make certain you give yourself plenty of room, especially if you're new to working with Schlappen, because you can very quickly be crowding the eye on this fly, the back end as well as the front. Smooth this off a little bit. Put my thread back here, and now I'm going to tie in my Schlappen. The collar on here is just made out of some olive Schlappen. You want to make certain that you get a full feather. So it's not only a longish feather like this, but you're going to actually, some of this fluff here we're going to keep and we're going to wrap that in. So if you look at the rachis or the stem of the feather, you'll see it's real thick here. Right about here, it tapers down. It's much more flexible. You can also even take the feather and kind of bend it. And when it comes down here, you'll see and feel where it's really getting stiff on you. That's where we're going to cut this. This stuff here, if you try to tie that in and you palmer it, or I should say wrap it around the hook shank, it's going to split on you. So you got to have this stuff that's nice and flexible, the rachis where it's thinner. I'm going to collect that, tie in the butt end. I'm not concerned about it being a little bit messy. Messy is kind of the name of the game with this fly. Advance my thread up behind the eye of the hook and start wrapping this in. You'll want to stroke these fibers back, the barbs here, and try and keep them out of the way. As you're wrapping this forward, you're pretty much going to use as much of that feather as you can to fill up this space. Puts a nice collar, a nice bushy, webby, flowy, if those are all words, collar on the front of the hook, even though this is the trailer part of the hook. Just keep wrapping that in, even if it looks like it's kind of wrapping on top of each other. Again, this is not a delicate, dainty fly. This is one of your meat and potatoes flies. You get up to the eye of the hook, I'm going to secure that. 2 or 3 wraps. I'm just going to leave that in. And now I'm going to sweep all of this back. And I'm just going to wrap just a little bit to make just a small head. 4 or 5 turn whip finish. That secures the back half. Generally this end right here, just pop out. Glue, strong stuff. And I have a free sticker for anyone who can tell me where that reference comes from. Let me know in the comments down below if you know where that line comes from. So that is our back half. We're going to leave all of these rubber legs the way they are right now, but that is the back half. So what we're going to do on the front, we're going to kind of repeat the whole thing, except for we're not putting in a tail here. So I'm going to take that out of my vise for now. I'm going to put my front hook in, and in this case, I'm using the same hook. This is a 3366 number 2. You could not alternate, but you could have different hooks, a different one on the front, maybe like a Gamakatsu B10, Tiemco or something like that you could have on the front. You could have a longer shanked hook on the front, say like a Tiemco 5263 or something like that. It's up to you. But I'm just keeping it simple and going with the same hook. Debarb that and attach my thread. Getting a base layer of thread here down, and then I'm going to bring my thread back up to about 2/3 up the hook shank. Now, as I mentioned, this is an articulated fly, meaning we have a rear hook here and we have a front hook, and we have to have some way to attach that. For the attachment on this, I'm using, it is a hard Mason monofilament. It's used in a lot of the fishing world because it's very durable and rugged monofilament. You could use a regular 30-pound monofilament. You just want to have something that's going to be able to take some abuse. And I have a spacer in there of a bead. And I'm using a 6mm glass bead. And it's up to you what color you want to use. I generally, especially with an olive fly like this, go with a red bead. And I'm just using one bead, that's all. So to attach this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread the monofilament through the eye of my trailer. I'm going to get it more or less halfway down that monofilament. Now, when you cut this monofilament to make this, make certain you cut it long. It's inexpensive material. Don't try to cut it real short and then you're fiddling with short little pieces and they're not long enough. It's just more frustration than it's worth. I will then take the bead and place the bead on the monofilament like that, and then I'll slide it on down to the trailer. Now this is very important. You don't want to wedge it down there, even though it won't go over the eye of the hook. You want to have it just out in front a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to place this right up along the hook shank like this. I want this bead to basically settle right behind the hook. So I want the monofilament staying level with the shank of the hook, running right off the back, and that bead just sits right behind. If that bead's too close up and the whole fly is too close up like this, it's going to kick up in the back. I don't want that. If it's too far back, then the problem you get is it might come around and foul up. So you want that bead just maybe 1/16 of an inch or so right off of the trailer hook and just sitting right up against the hook and the bend of the hook right there. Plus, you want to make certain that your monofilament, you're wrapping it so that this hook stays in line with the other hook. If you're not careful, you can wrap this in such a way that the hook turns 90 degrees on you. So you want to make certain that you're getting that wrapped in. Generally, both strands are right on the side of the hook shank. Start wrapping down. Take your time with it. The other thing is, if this is, I'm going to intentionally make this long right here and get a few wraps in. I'm going to trim this just a little shorter, because once you start getting some of these wraps in, you can move this. Okay, so it might be easier to just go ahead and get a few wraps in like this. Then you can move this along the hook shank to get it in the right position where that bead is just sitting right where you want it. Then we can start coming down the hook shank all the way to the end of the body and then back up, really kind of cranking on that. Now it's my preference that I don't go much further than 2/3 up the hook shank. Some people will go a little bit further, but that's where I'm comfortable, is just about 2/3, because we're going to fold this back and then we're going to fold this back and tie both of those in. And this is important because as strong as that thread is on that mono, if you just clip those off here, there's a good chance you get a really big fish. It's going to pull that mono out from under all those thread wraps. But now it will not, because you have it doubled over on those thread wraps. Feel free to put in extra wraps. You want to snip the ends of that mono off. Feel free to put some extra wraps in there, as I said. Right in here, I'm just going to put a little bit of a thread dam. Going to give me a little bit more transition, not critical. But it does help in tying the fly. I'll place my thread about an eye length, maybe 1.5 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. Now I'm going to put some more glue on here. You could use a CA glue or, like a Loctite super glue type thing if you want to on that. I find the head cement works just as well. It just gives it a little bit of extra grip there. Now we're going to tie in our dumbbell eyes. Oh, one quick thing. A lot of times when you're working with articulated flies like this, you have this trailer back here and it kind of gets in the way. As you start sweeping materials down like this, there's nothing more frustrating than having your trailer just off to the side and you go like this and you end up hooking yourself. Here's a quick little tip. Take a rubber band, put it around your vise somewhere. Right here by this joint's a great place for me. Just put that there. Now you can put that trailer hook in that rubber band and it will keep it at least in line with the rest of the fly and keep it out of your way, under tension and out of your way. So as I was saying, we're going to put in our dumbbell eyes right now. I'm using this is a Wapsi red and black medium dumbbell eye. I'm not going to put these on top, although I have seen many people who do with this fly. The reason that Russ Madden did not put those on top, he didn't want it to jig as much, which it can cause it to jig a little bit more. But if you put it on the underside in here, it's far enough away from the point of the hook and the gap. It's not going to interfere with hook set, and it's going to help the fly track just a little bit better as opposed to jig up and down. Want to make certain where you tie that in is a good eye length behind the eye of the hook. I want to have about an eye length right here in front to finish this off. So we'll wrap that in. Bring my thread back down to the end of the shank. And again, more glue. The nice thing about a lot of these big old bushy streamers, warm water flies, and big old beefy trout streamers, they're not pristine little flies. They get kind of bulky and messy, but you throw a little glue here and there, it's just going to help hold it together a little better. Next, we're going to tie in our Estaz. Some people you'll see in some Circus Peanut recipes will put some more Marabou back here to help cover this up. I generally don't like to because I don't want too much covering that and interfering with the action of the trailer back here. You'll see when we put our Schlappen up front that it will actually flow all the way back and kind of cover some of that up as well. And I'm going to advance my thread, and this time I'm coming up to just about halfway up the hook shank. I'm going to wrap that Estaz in up to my thread that's halfway up the hook shank, and then we're going to tie in some rubber legs just like we did on the trailer portion. Again, you could just leave that in, and I just prefer to cut it off. I just think it's a little bit cleaner. I don't know. Maybe wrong there, but a little drop of glue on here. My rubber legs, once again, I'm going to leave the little tabs on. In this case, I like I said, 3 rubber legs on both sides in the back, but I'm going to do 4 in the front. So I'm just selecting 4 rubber legs here, pulling that apart so that I still have that little tab on there. And then same process as we did in the back. About halfway here, I'm going to bind those in. One quick note, if you've never tied anything in like this, it's generally what you're going to do is you're going to start by tying it, anchoring it there, going forward up here. Okay. Or you could start here and think about it, go back. But what you have to do is if I try to flip this over now and tie it in, my thread's not really going to grab that. It can pop off the front. So what I want to do is have my thread back here towards the back of this section so that as I bring this over, see it's going right over a nice chunk of those rubber legs and it's getting it nice and secured in there. You do this for flash, flash or Flashabou, crystal flash, other things, and it's a quick, easy way to tie it in and get it nice and secure too. They won't pull out. Once again, as I said, this is a meat and potatoes kind of fly. Attach my Estaz again. Advance forward just a little bit. Again, I'm going to get a couple of wraps, maybe 3 right here. This just kind of makes the legs look like they're coming out of the middle of this pattern. I really want to make certain that I'm not crowding myself up around those dumbbell eyes as I put my Schlappen in. Don't be surprised if the body up here is getting kind of bulky under there. That's okay. Secure that, my thread right there, and now I get another Schlappen feather. And again, I want one that is going to be long and has a good bit of this fluff right down at the bottom right here. The more of that, the better. It just really helps bring this fly to life. I'm off the bottom portion. Anchor that in. Most of my tying videos, I'm talking about, watching your thread wraps and everything. But on these, you really don't have to worry about it that much. Put a few extra thread wraps in there just to secure it. It's just as good. Same process as we did on the rear section here. I'm going to palmer this in. I should say wrap this in. I'm not palmering it. I'm going to wrap this in. I do not want to wrap this all the way up to the dumbbell eyes. I'm going to be just maybe about an eye length shy of the dumbbell eyes, as you'll see in a moment. Longer feathers will make this a little bit fuller. It's up to you. You could even tie in 2 if you wanted. Some people will tie 2 short feathers in. They get the same effect as 1 long feather. Secure that in. Sweep that back. Smooth this off a little and secure that end in. Now, we're going to reattach our Estaz. And the idea is that we're going to wrap the Estaz kind of figure 8 around these dumbbell eyes so that we get a nice kind of an egg on the front of this is what they refer to it. Although it's kind of funny because even with an egg sucking leech, I don't know of anybody who's ever actually seen a leech sucking on an egg, but there you have it. So that's the idea, is we're going to get a wrap or 2 right back here to get a nice transition down, wrap right behind those eyes. Now we're going to start crisscrossing them over the top there, bring it under, around, over the top there. I've got enough. I'm just going to bring it right around there and tie that little piece off. Sweep some of that back. Even if you have some sticking out over the eye, it's fine. Build you up your head. Get your 6 or 7 turn whip finish in there. And some head cement. So with the head cement on the front here, the head of our Circus Peanut is done. A couple other things that I'm going to do here. The rubber legs, as I mentioned, I'm just going to cut these tabs off. Just pull these aside here and just cut the tabs off. And I'm not worried about whether they are the same length on each side or whatever. That's not what they're there for. They just add a lot of action to the fly. The other thing is I'm going to put a little bit of head cement right down below inside that Estaz right behind the eye. It's going to help it a little bit more. But that is the Circus Peanut. You go and do a search out there, you're going to see all kinds of different colors and even some different variations. Like I said, other people kind of have their way of tying this. Notice that the Schlappen up front here, as that is flowing backwards, it's going to flow right over that middle section and kind of obscure it a little bit, but it's not going to be so long that it's going to be affecting the action of the trailer back here. I know I fish for smallmouth with this in black, as well as even a white that works really, really well. The olive is good. If you've got slower water, you can creep this thing along the bottom like a sculpin or something, even maybe a crawdad. Who knows what the fish see in these things. But the Circus Peanut is a very effective warm water fly, originally tied for swinging to big browns up in Michigan, but it has gotten to be a popular fly all over the country. That is Russ Madden's Circus Peanut. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.